I'm pretty sure that every single one of you viewing this is pretty familiar with the television show South Park, which recently entered into its 16th season a few months ago. This show has been synonymous with controversy and pushing the envelope with its comedy, which is why it is, or I guess now I should say was, my favourite show. The reason why I'm saying that is because I had a traumatic experience after the airing of the final episode in a run on April 25, 2012. South Park seasons are comprised of 14 episodes and are aired in 2 runs, each run having 7 episodes and occurring about 6 months apart from each other. Kind of useless information, but I just thought I'd add it in here. I'm only recently coming out about this experience now, in July, because I finally got released from the local nut house for good behaviour. Go figure. So without further ado, let's get to the story. So here I am, Wednesday, April 25, 2012, at 10:31 PM. I had just finished watching the final episode, the one called Cartman Falls in Love. I was satisfied with the episode as a whole because the last couple were bombs. Happens to the best of shows. So I was sitting there, flipping through the cable guide to see what was going to be on later during the night. All I saw were reruns until I hit 2:30 AM, and the guide froze. So in a blind fury, I decided to keep pressing the up button on my remote, even though that was probably making the situation worse. After about half a minute, it unfroze and started moving because I had hit it about 50 times. I was watching all this text move in front of me pretty fast, about 4 shows per second, until still seeing reruns being showed. Then it hit 3 AM, which is when the late night ads start to play. I was about to reach for the remote to turn off the TV and go to bed, when all of a sudden I could have sworn that I saw the guide say South Park at 4 AM. After the guide finally stopped, I went back to check if my eyes didn't deceive me. Sure enough, there it was. South Park was scheduled for 4 AM, which was odd, as I stated before, because usually everything from 3 AM to 7 AM is infomercials. Another thing that struck me as odd was that the guide said that the episode was only 15 minutes long, like an Adult Swim show. So now my curiosity had reached its peak. I pressed the info button to see what the description of the episode was. All it said was, South Park Series Finale. By that point, I was both confused and curious at the same time. I thought it was impossible, because the show just got renewed this year. Only 2 minutes went by, and I decided to stay up all night and watch it. And I said loudly, fuck school, I've got to see this. So my night was comprised of reading creepypasta, a very effective way of staying awake, chugging Monster, and playing Xbox. So at 3:50, I didn't waste any time. I turned my Xbox off and went to Comedy Central. After waiting for the stupid Extensi ad to end, there was something unexpected that happened. The Secret Stash screen came up. For those that don't know, Secret Stash is a time slot where they don't censor anything, and it is brought out by a screen of a loan room with a viewer discretion warning on it. The particular warning on this broadcast had an empty cellar that was littered with pools of blood, patches of hair, chunks of flesh, and chains. I was kinda disturbed by that image, because I was reading creepypasta prior to seeing it. So finally the episode airs. The opening was strange, because it was the same setup as the first season, but it was totally reanimated and in HD. It was pretty cool, to be honest. Couldn't say the same about the theme song. It was a South Park theme song, but it was scratchy, wasn't synced at all, and droning, going from fast and high-pitched to slow and low-pitched, as if it was a record being played on a bad turntable. The episode opened to the boys standing at the bus stop, a regular place at the beginning of the episodes. The episode started off as hilarious. I forget what was said, but it was a nonsensical argument going on between Kyle and Cartman that just spurred into comedic gold. All of a sudden, there's a male voice that says, "Hey boys, The boys look over and it's Trey Parker. Yes, both Trey Parker and Matt Stone had their own characters made for this episode, which I thought would be awesome. So they approached the boys and asked them if they wanted to go to South Park Studios to see how an episode is made. The mode of transportation that Trey pointed out was an old rickety van with no windows in the back. The following conversation took place. Stan said,
No dude, we're good.
Matt said, "Ah, come on, we created you." Cartman said,
Listen, butthole, we're not going to your fucking studio.
Trey pulled out an aerosol can and said, "Sorry boys, but..." I sprayed them all in the face with the gas. The spray made the boys all pass out, and Matt and Trey hauled the boys into the back of the van before driving off. The next scene is seen through the point of view of one of the boys. It didn't show who it was at the time, nor did you see any of the boys in the view. The boy saw that Trey was driving, while Matt was riding shotgun, when all of a sudden, Matt looks back and yells, "Trey, they're waking up!" And Trey says to Matt, "Well, beat the shit out of them." Matt reaches under a seat and took out an aluminum baseball bat, jumped into the back of the van, and proceeded to club all the boys with the bat. The eyes slowly closed and blurred until the screen turned black. I was starting to get a little uneasy because the bat sounds were extremely loud, and actually sounded as if they were hitting human skulls. I wonder how they recorded those sounds. I was debating on just turning off my TV and going back to Xbox, but I figured that I went too far to back out now, so I kept on watching. The point of view shot came back. Now the character was now on the ground and saw all of the boys in the cellar being chained up on the wall, all by their wrists and moaning with bashed skulls and bruised torsos. From left to right was Carl, Kenny and Stan. The boy on the ground was Cartman. Cartman finally looked far to his left, and it finally left the point of view shot. There was Trey and Matt wearing a lab coat and wielding a machete. Trey went up and said, "Well, we both agreed that 16 seasons is enough. We're done with this shit." He kicked Cartman in the teeth, knocking most of them out in the process. After this horrific scene of one of my favourite characters being assaulted, at this point I started to notice that there was some thin moving horizontal lines and sound distortion, as if it was all being played on a VHS. Trey nodded to Matt, who was standing next to Kyle. Next thing is that Matt is now stabbing and slashing Kyle in a very gruesome manner, with very detailed gore. You can hear Kyle garbling blood until it comes rushing out of his mouth, coughing as his vital organs are being sliced apart. Finally, Matt cuts off Kyle's head and laughs as blood gushes out of his neck. He then took Kyle's head and beat Kenny with it. As the camera cuts to Trey's point of view above Cartman, Cartman is just leaking blood. Afterwards, Trey looks into the camera for 10 seconds until saying, "We told you this would happen." The scene continued to play with images of blood and dismemberment, and the sounds of screams, slicing of the machete, blood dropping on the floor, chains rattling. The scene progresses until Stan is finally killed. Matt chops Stan's arms off and approached Trey. Cartman is now dried of tears and turning pale, with a large puddle of blood on the ground below him. He's slipping and falling over the place. Matt takes the machete and slices Cartman's stomach and starts shoving his own fat down his throat. Matt yelled, "Yeah, you like that, you fat fuck. You're gonna love this." Matt reaches into the hole that he made in Cartman, ripped out his heart and shoved it in his mouth. Cartman falls over dead. The scene cuts to Matt and Trey staring blankly into the camera. The static and distortion came back with faint voices in the background, but now the episode isn't even recognizable anymore. In fact, the distortion practically ruptured my speakers, and the visuals left me emotionally scarred for life. I was fixated on my TV, trying to comprehend the abomination that I just watched, when all of a sudden I saw them both scream louder than the distortion in demonic voices. At that point, my TV started to smoke and stopped working. I ended up just checking into the nut house for my own good, before I did anything drastic to get it out of my head.